the discrepancy in records is incredible. The 1-6-1 Houston Texans will be traveling to MetLife to play the New York Giants. I feel like we've been home almost like every week this season. No, it's kind
We
of
haven't
felt
been
like
home in 2 weeks, right? We were in Seattle and then the bye week. So
in the bye. Before that, home against Baltimore, at London. Or no, I'm sorry. We were on the road against Jacksonville. Actually, you're right. It has been a while.
yeah,
Jacksonville, Seattle.
it's like our big chunk of like not playing at
Oh,
home.
yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking by that. Anyway, Giants are 7-point favorites. They lead the all-time series 4-1. The only time they lost to the Houston Texans was their first year as an NFL franchise in 2002, where they lost to former Giants backup quarterback David Carr. That really 2002 was the first year I started watching the Giants. Luckily, I did not watch that game, nor would I probably remember it anyway if I did.
It cost them the division that year, actually.
It did, and the only thing I remember from 2002 is the meltdown in San Francisco, where rookie Jeremy Shockey got into everyone's face. Oh, the Giants are up by like 3 touchdowns, and then what do you know?
He threw a cup of ice in the stand and hit somebody.
He did throw a cup of ice in the stand, in the stand. I forget what that was about, but he's such a
no, he was like doing that out of like frustration or something. Like, as much as I loved the playing style of Jeremy Shockey, there were times where like I'm sure there were times where he probably would have pissed me off. But then again, when I was younger, I didn't really think about that. Now I think if I were older and watched Jeremy Shockey, I don't think I would have been as fond of him as I was when I was younger. I'm still not really.
It's weird. It's 2022, but we're talking about 2002. Going back to 20 years later, the Giants are 2-0 against the Texans at home. Will the offense get going in this game? That's my first question.
I would say that this is if there's going to be any game for the offense to get going and maybe crack the 30 burger, which has not happened for the Giants in a while. And yes, I agree, Dr. Rose. He definitely was addition by a subtraction because we won the Super Bowl with him being injured. Coincidence? I think not. But anyways, getting back to that question. Sorry about that. I would have to say I think this is definitely the game that they can get going because we know that Houston is a very flawed team. I mean, they're probably in the lead for the #1 draft pick sweepstakes. So, and not to mention, I think the Giants are just due to score over 30 points. Sorry to bring up that number again, but you'll notice I've brought it up like when talking about certain failed coaching tenures in years past.
Wow. 30 points, Hank. Have
like
you seen our receiving core? 30 points?
I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm talking about like Saquon.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about Daniel. I'm talking about having faith in Daniel Jones.
Hey, we saw Joe Mixon score 5 touchdowns this past weekend.
Fair.
Yep.
Fair.
Yeah, see?
And their run defense is trash. I mean, we'll get to that in a little bit, but
Sam gets where I'm coming from.
I think that in terms of the offense coming to life in this game, if they're going to do it, they need to do it like the first drive because we saw the Texans play. First of all, the Texans are coming off a long week. They were playing on Thursday night against the Eagles. They came out, scored on that first drive, and like got people into this game. Like it was I think it was a game between the Eagles, and the Eagles are obviously undefeated. So for them to have an actual game that I thought was going to be a blowout is impressive on the Texans' part. So first of all, it's not an undermining opponent. Like we can't just assume we're going to win this game just because of their record. So we need to still go out there and put our best foot forward. So if they're going to, if something's going to happen, we need this to happen like that first drive of the game to get on top because the Texans can be sneaky. They might come from behind or even come out, in front of us for a little while, and then we have to play a catch-up game. So I'm just saying they're a sneaky little bunch, and that Dameon Pierce, which we'll talk about in a bit, sneaky little guy. So they're not, again, this isn't just in the bag for us. It's something that we need to play the game too.
That's Garth's guy, Dameon Pierce, top 6 rusher in the league as a rookie. He's up there for offensive rookie of the year right now. So look out, Giants. Steve says, wow, all the Shockey hate tonight. LOL.
Like I said, he was decent, but the thing that I hold against him
He was more than decent. I'm sorry. I think we're about to have a little argument here. Jeremy Shockey was a fantastic football player.
He was. I'll give you that. But at the
and
same
Jim
time,
Fossil loved that man. That was Fossil's guy. When Coughlin came here, he fell out of love.
And for good reason. But I also think he was a guy that kind of hindered the development of Eli Manning. That's just my personal
Yes, opinion. I do agree, but he was no Odell Beckham.
True. Thank God he didn't do any
he was close. Like he did some stupid things, Shockey, but he still made plays when it mattered. And we'll put the awkwardness aside for now. I know we have slightly different opinions about Jeremy Shockey, but
you can tell I have a love-hate relationship for Jeremy Shockey.
I do agree to an extent. He did some foolish things. The cafeteria fight with Brandon Short too was not. That was an insult for real, Hank. Average. Yeah, see, that's my thing, Steve. Shockey was not average. Shockey was a top 5 tight end in the league.
I was making an understatement.
All right. So to avoid this turning into the Jeremy Shockey show, let's continue.
Jeremy Shockey, come on the show.
Yes, Shockey, if you're listening, we want you bad. Saquon against Dameon Pierce, that's going to be an insane running back matchup. The Giants have the worst run defense in the National Football League, despite being 6-2. So I expect Pierce to have a really good game. But the Texans' run defense is no better. They have guys like Malik Collins. Their defensive line is more better at rushing the passer than stopping the run. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I'm interested to see how Love does being the defensive signal caller, because before this year, Love really didn't have too much of a role on the defense. So I'm interested to see about that. How do we feel about Love being like the leader back there?
I think that it's a pair of shoes that he has to fill, but I said it earlier in the show. I'm not entirely worried. I feel like it's something that he can grow into, maybe not in the first game, maybe not, we're expecting that McKinney is not going to be here for the rest of the season. Like, it's something that he can grow into, but I'm not entirely worried about it, to be honest.
First of all, Steve, appreciate you. Second of all, I would say Julian Love has been one of our most versatile defensive players this year. I would tend to agree. I think that's definitely a role that he can handle, and he's pretty much done whatever has been asked for him all year. So, I mean, what's stepping up into a larger role that's, going to take a good amount of shoes to fill?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Daniel Jones, another X factor, right? We mentioned this 5-game winning drives this year, most in the first 8 games for a season since 1950. Hank, do you know who did that?
That would have been the Marlboro Man, Charlie Connerly.
Correct. Which, by the way,
fun fact, is the second best Giants quarterback to come out of Ole Miss.
Yes, that would be correct. And I just want to quickly shout out John McVay, Sean McVay's grandfather, who passed away a little over a week ago. Rest in peace, John McVay, head coach for the Giants for a little bit. Lived to his 90s. He was the oldest living Giants head coach. So I want to quickly acknowledge that. I think now it's Parcells, right?
Yeah.
Parcells is what, 80? 79, 80, something like
81.
that.
He's still cranking too.
Yeah, and he's still with it. Like, he's mentally with it, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, he was on the Manning cast, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
Like was that last season or this season? Can't remember.
Think.
But either way, he was just sitting in his lounge chair, just like chilling.
Yeah. What else do we got? So the Texans coming off a tough loss to the Eagles, 29-17, but as Sam mentioned, they were in the game up until late. The defense had 4 sacks on a good Eagles offensive line, 2 of them from former Buffalo Bill Jerry Hughes. Dameon Pierce had 140 rushing yards, but the Eagles defense ultimately won the turnover battle, causing 2 Davis Mills interceptions and extending the Texans' losing streak to 3 games. So obviously, Houston is going to be itching to snap that losing streak. So with that being said, let me ask you this, Hank. What is your key to the game?
I'm going to say one of my first keys to the game would be to contain Dameon Pierce. I think for the Giants, if you're going to lose this game, at the very least, make Davis Mills be the one that beats you. Dameon Pierce, I think we know, is going to be one of the better weapons they have offensively, and that's really not saying much considering who the Houston Texans are. But of course, you know what my other one is, but you'll notice I haven't really said it much this year because they've actually been doing a great job of that for once.
Yep. That's why containing the run has become the new get off the field on third down.
Actually, I haven't really had a typical key to the game this year, just like a different one depending on the opponent.
Well, you took mine, Hank. I was going to say, not just contain Dameon Pierce, but contain the run in general. So I'll just also say that the consistency of making sure Daniel Jones has the time to make the plays that we know he can make with the wide receivers that he does have, with the targets that he does have. So I would say that protecting Daniel Jones is really important. And I'm not too worried about this Texans defense per se. But with our struggling offensive line, it's just something that we definitely have to keep up with. And we don't need Daniel Jones to get hurt either. I will literally just scream if that happens.
Yeah, protecting Jones is key, especially without Evan Neal, without Ben Bredesen. It's going to be a struggle. Tyre Phillips likely to start at right tackle again. I would not be shocked if Nick Gates sees some action. I'm not sure who will be starting at left guard. It'll probably still be Josh Azudu for this week. Maybe Gates rotates in there a little bit. I'm not sure, but I think the Giants need to pressure Davis Mills. Don't let him get through his progressions because he's an accurate QB. We're without Xavier McKinney, so you can't rely on coverage sacks, right? The Giants need to continue to blitz. Send DBs. Dane Belton is going to be an X factor in this game, in my opinion. The Texans have a good left side of their offensive line, which is why Dameon Pierce is so successful. Laramie Tunsil and Kenyon Green, their first-round pick from this year, 15th overall, who many claim to be a reach, has actually been playing very, very well. So I think players like Leonard Williams and Kayvon Thibodeau really have to step up. Leonard Williams finally back healthy. So I think it'll be very interesting to see if they can get pressure on Davis Mills, because if they can, then they can focus on stopping the run. It'll make the defense worry about less, because the Texans, despite how well Pierce has been doing, they're tied for the least amount of rushing touchdowns in the NFL. So again, you want to get them into a third and long type of situation. Stop the run early, leads to pressure on third down, and potentially the turnovers, which is what we want. I know it's not Thanksgiving yet, but some more turnovers would be nice. I think the Giants are last in the NFL with only 1 caused interception this season.
Really?
Yeah.
It seems wildly low for us.
Considering they blitz all the time, too.
Yeah, interesting.
But moving on to our players to watch segment, always one of my favorite segments of the week. Sam, who do you got for me for Houston and then the Giants?
So for Houston, I was kind of bouncing between 2 guys, but I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks only because I know he was he was dealing with an injury, and he was also kind of dealing with the team in general, but he is basically their best part of their offense for the most part in terms of in the air. And I know that the Texans perform better. I mean, Dameon Pierce is great running back, but he only has 3 touchdowns on the year. So Obviously, they like throwing it in the air to score touchdowns rather than putting it on the ground. So I'm gonna watch Brandon Cooks, and he's he's not doing great this year, but he's still a solid wide receiver. So he's gonna be my Houston player to watch, and then my Giants player to watch is gonna be Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm doing 2 wide receivers only because like we said earlier with our breakout players, like he's the guy that I want to watch only because I want to see Daniel Jones throw him like a 75-yard bomb and just get him in the end zone and just like get that feeling that like, oh yeah, Wandale's going to be our guy and like Wandale's going to be the wide receiver core future. So I'm going to keep my eyes on him, more hoping that that's something that happens.
Alrighty, sounds good. I like those choices. I am gonna go with Dameon Pierce, who I think is the one of the other better members of the Texans offensive attack, and I pretty much already went a bit into detail why I would have him on that choice. And for the Giants, you might think that I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley because I mentioned a running back. However, if you paid attention to my breakout players for the Giants in the second half, I am going to go with Kayvon Thibodeau. I think this is the game where he gets a few sacks for the New York Giants, and I think this is the game where you start to see it snowball into a bigger second half for him going forward.
I like that pick a lot, Hank. I hope Thibodeau gets 2 sacks at least in this game. That would be awesome to see.
I could see it.
For me, for Houston, I really like Jerry Hughes. He scares me. 7 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. He has an interception. He's pretty high up in the PFF ratings at 76.3. He's a guy who's familiar with going up against Brian Dable coached players in practice with the Buffalo Bills. So the Giants have to be wary of him. He probably knows a few of Dable's secrets. So again, the coaching is going to be very key. But as long as Andrew Thomas is matched up against Jerry Hughes, I think we'll be fine. But Hughes is the best and only legit pass rusher on that Texans team. And then I guess 2 honorable mentions for them we haven't mentioned. Jalen Petrie, second on the team with 57 tackles, second-round pick, 5 TFLs, leads the team with 2 interceptions. They have 2 solid rookies in their secondary. Which is why I think Saquon and Wan'Dale are 2 very important players in this game. You have Derek Stingley, who we know if Golladay plays, going up against a rookie corner. That'll be a nice matchup to watch as well. Stingley has 5 passes defended. We all thought that Stingley picked 3rd overall was a reach.
Yeah.
I still think it was. I don't understand why with Sauce Gardner on the board. Maybe they just felt Stingley fit their scheme a little bit more. I don't know, but I'd say if there's any strong suit on Houston, it's the secondary. It's the 2 rookies in the secondary. That's really the only thing I'm scared about. I wouldn't even say scared, just concerned. For the Giants, I'm going with Dane Belton, the safety. I'm sticking with secondary for Big Blue as well. You'll likely see him on the field much more and in the box without Xavier McKinney. That was McKinney's role. Love is the free safety. McKinney is that box safety. So Love will be back deep. And we even saw Belton rotate in a little bit as well. I think Belton will be rushing the passer a lot. So Davis Mills needs to look out. I mean, he does have 8 interceptions on the season and has been sacked 19 times. 8 picks is a lot through 8 games. That's 1 interception a game. So if the Giants are going to cause turnovers, Belton is going to be very, very key, on the football field. But my question is this 4th-round rookie really up to the task, right? Because we've talked about all the rookies so far. Belton's been good, but he's kind of flown under the radar like a McFadden. So we don't really know. The jury is still out on these guys, and you have to give them time to develop. But I think him learning under Landon Collins and Julian Love will definitely help his development. So I'm excited to see what Dane Belton could do. Look out for number 24 in blue on Sunday. I like that a lot. Injuries. Sam, our injury list is much shorter now. I'm very happy about it.
It is very exciting, and the Texans injury list is actually longer than the Giants, which is real great. So for the Giants, we had Evan Neal, obviously with the knee injury, did not participate. Daniel Bellinger with the eye did not participate, but those are our only two DNPs. Cordell Flott with a calf injury was limited. Kenny Galladay with his knee injury was limited. We might be seeing him on Sunday. Maybe he'll actually do something. O'Shane Zimenez with the quad was limited, and Richie James was full practice after his concussion, which is fairly good news. I'd like to see Richie James back on the field. For the Texans, Brandon Cooks with his wrist injury was limited. Linebacker Neville Hewitt had a hamstring injury. He did not participate. DT Malik Collins with a chest injury was limited. Wide receiver Nico Collins was a groin limited. I almost read that as Nico Lalos for a second. I was like, wait a second, what's going on? I miss Nico. Wide receiver Philip Dorsett with an ankle is a full practice. He's another guy that we should keep our eyes on in terms of defense. Defensive tackle Jaleel Johnson had an illness, but he was a full practice. Running back Damian Pierce, chest shoulder, limited. Linebacker Jalen Reeves-Maybin with a groin was limited. And guard Justin McCray with a concussion was a full practice today.
The Nico Collins injury is definitely the most concerning one for them because he's the complementary to Brandon Cooks, and he's their deep play threat. So if he plays, I would definitely look out for him as well. But yeah, I mean, Pierce and Barkley are both banged up. Running backs are always bound to get hurt at some point. They take the most hits out of anybody.
Yeah, it is what it is.
I mean, they're getting hit every play, essentially. But all right, let's get into our game predictions. Stan, I'll start with you here. Who do you have winning this game and by how much?
I have the Giants winning this game. But like I said, this is not going to be just an in-the-bag kind of situation. I think that the Texans are going to give us a fight the way they did the Eagles. Hopefully the Giants learn from that Eagles game just a little bit. But them being 7-point favorites, I feel like I respect the line here. So I'm going to do 28-21 Giants. Very close to that 30-point mark, Hank.
I like that. You know what? I'm going to be bold. Giants win 31-13.
Nice. Lots of 3s and 1s.
I hope you're right.
I know that's kind of crazy, but the more important fact of the matter is this is one of the few games this season that I'm actually confident in picking the Giants to win.
That's true. Hank's been picking against us mostly.
Yeah, this is going to be a clean sweep here. Again, coming off the bye, it's always nice having that extra week off. I do think that Houston will present some matchup challenges, especially with the way they played the Eagles tough last week. Their defense is their strong suit because of Lovie Smith, defensive-minded head coach. But their offense is not up to par. They have nothing outside of Damian Pierce. They're not a threat to score many points. So I'm going with the Giants 27-17. I think Jones has a good game. He's not going to throw for like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's not going to happen because the secondary is very good. Also due to the lack of weapons that the Giants have. I think Saquon, though, will break out in this game. And like I said, the Giants defense is, again, at times it'll bend but not break. And I think they'll cause a couple turnovers this game. So,
is this our first clean sweep of the season?
For picking the Giants, I would think so.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, like I'm saying, like all 3 of us picking the Giants this season.
Dallas. Did I predict? I predicted them to lose to Dallas.
You did.
What about the Carolina game?
I picked Carolina. I remember.
You picked Carolina.
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying because I know Hank picked the opposing team a lot of times. I think this is the first time that we're picking all the Giants, all 3 of us this season.
Wow.
I don't want to fully explain the reasoning. I don't want to fully explain my reasoning for not picking the Giants as much as I probably could have, but I think you probably have an idea.
I think it's okay, Hank, because a lot of times we win when you pick them. So hopefully this didn't jinx anything.
What do I often say, Sam? I would rather be wrong and excited than right and disappointed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it'll be exciting to see what happens this Sunday. And one last thing I wanted to mention too, Joe Shane might be up for GM of the year, in all honesty. I know Daboll's been rumored as coach of the year, but I just want to give this man a shout out for everything he does for this football team. And there's one other hot take I wanted to make tonight. When he was asked that a team wanted to trade for a good player, remember there was a question asked that the Giants were offered a trade by a team for a good player. I don't think it was Saquon. I think it was Dexter Lawrence. That's my hot take of the night. And Joe Shane gave it a hard no. And in the past, the Giants have not valued interior defensive linemen as much. I really think Joe Shane wants to give him a second contract next season as well. I know he's still under contract on the fifth-year option next year since they exercised it, but I just think he's done a good job at managing this cap where, he's not fully degrading everything that Gettleman did. He knows Gettleman did do some decent things for this team. There was definitely a lot more bad than good, but there is talent on this roster that Joe Shane did inherit, and he's not going to cut ties with all of those players. He realizes that. So again, I think he's done a good job at recognizing that talent and bringing in new players and not pushing the panic button just because they're 6-2 and have no wide receivers. They prioritize the O-line. They fix the O-line. The receiving core stinks, fine. When the Giants made the Super Bowl in 1990, who were their receivers? Mark Ingram and Stephen Baker.
The touchdown maker.
Right. So at the end of the day, you don't need excellent wide receivers to make it far. Right.
We're literally proving that true right now.
That's definitely my point of emphasis. But I do think it'll be interesting. The Giants are still in a fight with the Eagles and the Cowboys. I think you want to avoid being that 6th seed and potentially drawing a matchup in Seattle. I think you'd rather play the 4, whether it be Tampa or Atlanta, most likely Tampa. But then again, no one wants to play Brady in the playoffs, but I mean, hey, the division's still up for grabs. I know we're 2 back in the loss column, but we all know the Eagles could potentially slide a little bit. We still have 2 meetings against them, 2 opportunities to beat them.
And the Eagles are playing the Commanders on Monday.
Yeah.
So we'll have to keep our eye on that too.
I
don't know. Taylor Heineke is like kind of on a fire. Who knows?
They almost beat the Vikings. They almost
did. And the Vikings are what? They're
7-1.
7-1.
Yep.
I was going to say
they led most of the game.
Yeah. So, and we have a lot of division left too.
Yes.
So it's gonna, it's great that we have this record now, but like we really our one division team was a loss, which is not great.
And I like how we weren't really thinking too much ahead tonight. We weren't talking about Detroit as well, potentially being 8-2 heading into Thanksgiving. We've had that mindset. Just take this one game at a time and focus on Houston, right?
That's a game that actually scares me more next week, but we'll talk
Detroit?
about that next week. Yeah.
Next week's episode leading up to Detroit is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it does. That could be a trap game for sure, especially if the Giants blow out the Texans. But
sure.
Sam, Hank, any final thoughts before we sign off for tonight?
No, I'm excited for this weekend though. I'm excited for this game.
Me too. Like I said, doesn't it feel nice to actually be confident in the Giants winning a game for once?
Yeah.
It does, indeed.
Folks, a quick reminder, tonight's episode was presented by our sponsor, BetUS. You can sign up with our promo code below at JOIN125. Get a 125% sign-up bonus when you bet on the go from your mobile device, anywhere, anytime. That's America's #1 favorite sportsbook, BetUS, where the game begins. Let's go Giants. Hoping for a nice Sunday win. And without further ado, let's go Big Blue.